The hospital's back parking lot was alive with chaos. Ambulance sirens echoed through the walls. Emergency radios crackled with non-stop chatter, and the air itself felt heavy with tension. Behind the wheel of one ambulance sat a woman. Her long brown hair was tied back, her face dusty from the long drive. She pulled the handbrake, opened the door, and stepped out with calm determination. "Hey, you're just a driver. Wait in the lobby." A staff member mocked. She didn't reply. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she picked up her medical bag and ran beside the stretcher, following the patient straight into the ER. Inside, a nurse's eyes froze when she noticed the woman's hands. They weren't the hands of a simple driver. Calluses ran along her index fingers. Scars crossed her palms, signs of someone who had stitched wounds under pressure, in conditions no one could imagine. The nurse whispered softly, almost to herself, "Those are the hands of a battlefield medic." This was Sofia Klein, 30 years old, of Austrian-German roots. Her sharp cheekbones carried the look of discipline, and her movements spoke of experience and control. Her beauty was cold and distant at first glance, but it warmed instantly whenever she focused on helping someone. Her eyes held something rare, a calm steadiness, the kind of eyes that had seen too much pain, but refused to give up hope. On the outside, she looked ordinary. She wore the simple uniform of an EMS driver, a gray polo shirt, dark blue tactical pants, duty boots. A radio crackled on her shoulder, and a pair of medical gloves clipped neatly to her belt. Nothing about her outfit suggested anything extraordinary. But beneath that plain appearance, Sofia carried a life full of untold stories. She worked at Riverview General Hospital, in a small hill town where ambulances were always short of staff. She had joined only as a part-time driver, filling in whenever others couldn't. Her personnel file was brief, just a commercial driving license, plenty of highway experience, and basic EMT certification. To everyone else, she was just a driver. No one asked questions. No one wondered why she seemed so confident, so steady under pressure. And when she first joined, the message was made clear to her. Drivers don't touch IVs. Drivers don't manage airways. Drivers don't do medical stuff. Sofia had only nodded. She never argued with anyone's authority. She never challenged the rules. She seemed like someone who simply followed protocol. But quietly, her actions revealed something deeper. Every shift, she checked tires, brakes, and oxygen systems with a sharp eye. She positioned tourniquets inside the ambulance where her left hand could grab them in less than a second. Before each call, she even ran her fingers along the ambulance frame, feeling for vibrations, the way only someone trained in survival would. Her very first emergency showed who she really was. A multi-vehicle accident, bodies everywhere, chaos on a narrow mountain road. Most drivers would panic. Sofia? She drove with surgical precision. The ambulance passed concrete barriers with only a 3-centimeter gap, never slowing too much, never shaking the injured patients in the back. "Nice driving," a paramedic admitted after the rescue. "But remember, you stay with the ambulance when we get to the ER." Sofia had just nodded. No arguments, no questions. Yet the paramedic couldn't forget her steady hands pushing the stretcher into the emergency department. Outside of work, her quiet helpfulness continued. At a small restaurant near the hospital, she once saw the elderly owner struggling with a broken blood pressure monitor. Within minutes, she had fixed it and handed it back. The old man looked at her in surprise. "Are you a doctor?" Sofia gave the smallest smile. "No, I drive ambulances." But her colleagues weren't as kind. In the break room, someone sneered, "Ever notice how our driver always carries that medical bag? Like she's trying to look more important than she really is." Sofia said nothing. She only opened her bag and checked every item inside. Suturing needles, arterial clamps, chest dressings. For needles, every tool positioned with the memory of 1,000 emergencies. They only saw a driver. They didn't see the soldier's scars on her palms. They didn't see her eyes that scanned a room like a security operative. They didn't see the calm born only from surviving war. And deep in her wallet, hidden behind her driver's license, Sofia kept a small piece of worn fabric. On it, hand-stitched words read, "Hold the line." She never explained it to anyone. She never spoke of where it came from. But soon, the city would learn that Sofia Klein was far more than an ambulance driver. And the truth would come crashing into the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon at 2:47 p.m. When the explosions hit and all hell broke loose. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The hospital was running on its usual routine. Patients waiting, nurses moving fast, doctors in surgery. No one could have guessed what was about to happen. At exactly 2:47 p.m., the ground shook, windows rattled, distant sirens wailed. A massive gas explosion tore through the Riverside industrial complex. Within minutes, smoke clouds rose high into the sky. Shock waves rippled through the city. And then came more explosions. Sofia's radio crackled to life. All available units respond. Code Orange MCI mass casualty incident. Multiple patients. All ambulances on emergency cycle. She didn't waste a second. Sofia jumped into her ambulance, engine roaring, sirens screaming through the streets. When she arrived, the scene looked like a battlefield. Flames swallowed buildings. Smoke poured into the sky. Fire engines lined the road. Dozens of injured people lay scattered, crying out for help. Secondary explosions shook the ground. Sofia parked with precision, positioning her ambulance in a way that gave them a safe escape route, while also shielding incoming patients from the smoke. She set up traffic cones, creating a one-way lane for ambulances to flow in and out quickly. Small things, yet they saved precious minutes. Drivers stay outside the red zone. A fire captain barked at her, pointing toward the burning factory marked with caution tape. Leave the rescue work to trained personnel. Sofia only nodded, but her eyes scanned the entire scene. She noticed things others missed. The way smoke curled from certain walls showing structural weakness, the sparks of damaged electrical wires, the cracks in the floor that meant danger. Years of experience told her where collapses could happen. The first patient was a man in his 40s, blood spraying from his leg in a dangerous rhythm. A severed artery. The paramedic tried to stop it, fumbling with a tourniquet, hands shaking. Without hesitation, Sofia stepped forward. She handed him the correct size, guided his grip, tightened the strap, and quickly marked the time on medical tape. The bleeding slowed. The man had a chance now. "Thanks," the paramedic muttered, then quickly added, "But remember, no for placement. That's not for drivers." Sofia only nodded, stepping back into the shadows. But then came the second patient. A young woman, barely in her 20s, gasping for air. Her chest rose with a terrifying wheeze, the classic sign of a tension pneumothorax. Air was filling inside, crushing her lungs and heart. "Who's got a 14-gauge needle?" a medic shouted desperately. Silence. Nobody had one ready. Seconds were running out. Sofia quietly unzipped her bag. She pulled out the needle, handed it over, and whispered in a calm, steady voice, "Fourth intercostal space, mid-axillary line." The paramedic looked confused but followed her instructions. The moment the needle pierced, there was a loud hiss of escaping air. The girl's breathing steadied. Her oxygen levels rose. The monitor's alarms slowed. Everyone froze. That kind of accuracy wasn't taught in basic EMT training. Came from battlefield medicine. The paramedic stared at Sofia, his eyes full of shock and respect. Where did you learn that technique?" Sofia's voice was flat, almost cold. "Emergency medicine," she said simply. Then she stepped back, reorganizing supplies, as though nothing had happened. But her cover was slipping. During transport back to Riverview General, her driving showed the same perfection as her medical skills. She used engine braking instead of sudden stops, took turns so smoothly that patients barely jolted, balanced speed with stability as if she had trained for combat evacuations. When she reached the hospital, the security guard moved to block her. "Drivers stay outside the ER," he ordered. But Maya Jensen, a trauma nurse in her 30s, was watching closely. She saw details others ignored. Sofia's scars, her surgical calluses, the way she touched patients with practiced precision. As Sofia pushed a stretcher, Maya's eyes went to her hands. Those weren't the hands of a simple driver. They were the hands of someone who had sutured arteries in the dark. Someone who had steadied dying hearts under impossible pressure. "You've stitched arteries without proper lighting, haven't you?" Maya asked quietly. Sofia avoided her eyes. "I'm an ambulance driver." Before Maya could push further, another wave of patients stormed into the ER. One of them, a young construction worker, was collapsing fast. Face burned, stomach swelling, pulse weak. He was bleeding inside. The ER was overwhelmed. The main surgeon was trapped in an operating room. Maya shouted orders, but equipment was short, and staff were drowning in patients. Suddenly, the man convulsed. His blood pressure plummeted. A clamp fell from someone's hands. Chaos erupted. That's when Sofia stepped forward. Her eyes sharpened, switching into a mode no one had seen before. She placed her fingers on the femoral artery, counted the pulse, and calmly said, "I'll hold pressure. You establish for access." "Drivers aren't allowed," someone began. "Let her work." Maya cut them off. What happened next silenced the room. Sofia's hands moved with speed and precision. She stabilized the bleeding, applied chest dressings, rotated tourniquets with exact timing. She guided Maya like a senior surgeon, explaining steps that only combat medics knew. In that moment, the truth became clear. Sofia wasn't just a driver. She wasn't even just a medic. She was something much more. A battlefield surgeon hidden in plain sight. The ER had become a storm. Patients kept flooding in. Burn victims, crushed workers, children coughing from the toxic smoke. The alarms screamed louder with every stretcher that rolled in. Doctors shouted, nurses ran. But it was chaos. And in the middle of that chaos stood Sofia, the ambulance driver, the invisible one, the woman no one really knew. For years, Sofia had kept her head down. Drive the ambulance. Drop off the patients. Stay in the background. That was her rule. But rules don't survive war. "We're losing him," a nurse yelled as a teenage boy convulsed on the table. His abdomen was swollen, his veins collapsing. Internal bleeding. The lead surgeon was still trapped in the OR. The junior resident was frozen, hands shaking, sweat pouring down his forehead. Sofia's eyes locked on the boy. She saw his lips turning blue, the monitor screaming, the nurses panicking. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "Move," she said firmly. The resident stammered. "Why, you can't be in here. Drivers aren't." But Sofia didn't argue. She simply reached for the scalpel. Her hands didn't shake. They moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before many times under worse conditions. With one swift motion, she made the incision. The smell of blood filled the room. The nurses froze. Sofia's voice was calm, commanding, "Suction, retractor, keep pressure on the right quadrant." She wasn't asking. She was giving orders. And the staff, without realizing it, obeyed. Her mind went back to another place. Not Riverview General, but a desert years ago. She was kneeling in a makeshift tent, sand whipping outside, explosions shaking the earth. A soldier lay before her, chest torn open by shrapnel. She had no operating table, no sterile tools, only her field kit and a flashlight held by a trembling private. Her commanding officer's voice echoed in her memory. "Doc, if he dies, the mission dies. You understand?" She had saved him that night. She had saved dozens like him. With limited supplies, with shaking ground, with bullets flying overhead. And now, here she was again. Not a war zone. Not a battlefield. But the stakes were just as high. Back in the ER, Sofia's hands worked like poetry. She clamped the artery. She guided the suction. She packed the wound with gauze in flawless sequence. Every motion was exact, efficient, life-saving. The boy's blood pressure slowly rose. His breathing steadied. "Pulse is coming back," Maya whispered, her eyes wide. The entire room was silent. Everyone stared at Sofia. The junior resident finally found his voice. "How did you do that?" "That's not ambulance driver training." That's... Sofia looked at him. Her eyes were sharp, unflinching, holding years of pain. That's battlefield medicine. The truth was out. But before anyone could ask more, another alarm rang out. Code Black. Mass casualty overflow. All hands now. The double doors burst open. More stretchers rolled in. Burn victims screaming. Workers with crushed ribs. Children covered in soot. The ER was drowning. Doctors were collapsing from exhaustion. Supplies were running out. Chaos spread like fire. And in that chaos, Sofia became something else. She wasn't just an ambulance driver anymore. She wasn't just a medic. She was a commander. She took charge of triage like she was born for it. You chest wounds to Bay 3. Keep them upright. You crush injuries, prep for possible compartment syndrome. Start 4 fluids now. Don't wait for orders. Her voice cut through the panic like steel. People listened because she sounded like someone who had commanded lives before. And in truth, she had. Maya caught her eye. Her voice low but trembling with respect. Who are you really? Sofia didn't answer. She didn't have time. She was already kneeling beside a girl whose airway was closing, improvising a surgical airway with the calm of a war doctor. Her secret was no longer safe. Every move she made screamed the truth. Sofia wasn't hiding anymore. The ghost of her past, the soldier, the battlefield surgeon, was standing in plain sight. And everyone was watching. The ER felt like a war zone. Monitors beeped wildly. Stretchers lined the hallways. Voices overlapped into a deafening roar. Some patients cried. Others prayed. The smell of blood, antiseptic, and smoke clung to every corner. Sofia moved through it all like a shadow with fire in her chest. Her hands worked fast, but her mind was calm. Too calm. This chaos was familiar. This wasn't just an emergency room anymore. It was a battlefield. A little girl, no more than 6, lay limp in her mother's arms. Her lips were turning blue. Please, save her, the mother screamed. Sofia took the child. No pulse, no breath. The young intern nearby whispered, trembling, "She's gone." But Sofia's voice was iron. "No, not on my watch." She pressed her hands on the girl's tiny chest. 1, 2, breathe. Her rhythm was steady, powerful, commanding. Time slowed. Nurses stopped to watch. Doctors froze. The mother sobbed. Sofia didn't stop. Her lips whispered silently between compressions. "Come back. Fight. Don't give up." And then the monitor beeped. A faint heartbeat. A gasp of air. The little girl's chest rose again. The room erupted in gasps and tears. The mother clutched Sofia's hands, crying, "You're an angel. You saved her." But Sofia's eyes flickered with something else. Not pride. Not joy. It was pain. Memories. Shadows she could never escape. Maya pulled her aside, voice trembling but firm. "You can't keep hiding this, Sofia. These people deserve to know who you are." Sofia looked around. The team that once saw her as just an ambulance driver now watched her with awe. The nurses who barely noticed her presence were following her orders without question. Even the senior doctors, exhausted and overwhelmed, were leaning on her strength. Sofia closed her eyes. Her past came flooding back. The desert, the gunfire, the wounded soldiers, the orders, "Save them, Doc, or we all die." And then her discharge papers, the silence, the need to disappear. For years she had buried it. She had told herself she wasn't that person anymore. But tonight proved the truth. You can change your job. You can hide your past. But you cannot erase who you really are. A final wave of patients poured in, burned workers, broken bones, poisoned lungs. The ER was drowning. The hospital director, pale with exhaustion, admitted, We can't handle this. We don't have the staff." That was the breaking point. Sofia stepped forward. Her voice was sharp, unwavering. "Yes, we can. Listen to me." And just like that, she became the general in a silent war. Divide triage by severity. Non-critical to the East Wing. Anyone with airway obstruction, straight to me. We need more 4 lines, raid supply closets if you have to. Rotate staff every 20 minutes, no excuses. No one collapses on duty. Her words lit fire into broken hearts. The doctors stood taller. The nurses moved with new strength. Even the janitors jumped in, carrying supplies and holding patients' hands. Sofia had done more than save lives. She had given them courage. Hours passed. The wave of casualties slowed. The screams quieted. The chaos dimmed into exhausted silence. When dawn's light finally broke through the hospital windows, Riverview General still stood. And so did its people. Patients lived. Staff endured. Against all odds. They had made it. Sofia stood at the edge of the ER, her uniform stained with blood that wasn't hers. Her body ached, but her heart was heavy in a different way. Maya approached quietly. You saved them, Sofia. You saved all of them. You can't keep living in the shadows anymore. The world deserves to know who you are. Sofia looked at the exhausted faces around her. Faces that now carried respect instead of doubt. She finally spoke, her voice low but steady. I was never just a driver. I was a combat medic. I've seen war. And tonight, this place felt no different. Maya's eyes glistened. You were born for this. You're not just carrying a past, Sofia. You're carrying a gift. Sofia turned back to the ward, watching the patients breathe, hearing the steady beeps of heart monitors that had almost gone silent forever. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself a small, tired smile. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or badges. Sometimes they hide in plain sight until the world needs them again.